Now on that same day, meaning the same day that the women went to the empty tomb, two of them were going to a village called Emmaus, about 7 miles from Jerusalem, and talking with each other about all these things that had happened. While they were talking and discussing, Jesus himself came near and went with them. But their eyes were kept from recognizing him. And he said to them, "What are you discussing with each other while you walk along?" They stood still, looking sad. Then one of them, whose name was Cleopas, answered him, "Are you the only stranger in Jerusalem who does not know the things that have taken place there in these days?" He asked them, "What things?" They replied, "The things about Jesus of Nazareth, who was a prophet, mighty in deed and word before God and all the people, and how our chief priests and leaders handed him over to be condemned to death and crucified him. But we had hoped that he was the one to redeem Israel. Yes, and besides all this, it is now the 3rd day since these things took place. Moreover, some women from our group astounded us. They were at the tomb early this morning, and when they did not find his body there, they came back and told us that they had indeed seen a vision of angels who said that he was alive. Some of those who were with us went to the tomb and found it just as the women had said, but they did not see him." Then he said to them, "Oh, how foolish you are, and how slow of heart to believe all that the prophets have declared. Was it not necessary that the Messiah should suffer these things and then enter into his glory?" Then, beginning with Moses and all the prophets, he interpreted to them the things about himself in all the scriptures. And as they came near the village to which they were going, he walked ahead as if he were going on. But they urged him strongly, saying, "Stay with us, because it's almost evening, and the day is nearly over." So he went in to stay with them. When he was at table with them, he took bread, blessed and broke it, and gave it to them. Then their eyes were opened, and they recognized him, and he vanished from their sight. They said to each other, "Were not our hearts burning within us while he was talking to us on the road, while he was opening the scriptures to us?" That same hour they got up and returned to Jerusalem. And they found the 11 and their companions gathered together. And they were saying, "The Lord has risen indeed, and he has appeared to Simon." Then they told what had happened on the road and how he had been known to them in the breaking of the bread. This is the word of the Lord. I try to imagine what it would have been like in that gathering of disciples. The women were there, and they had had appearances. And then there was Peter, and apparently he had had Jesus appear to him. And then all of a sudden, these two guys, who are the chief actors in this drama, show up and say, "Hey, we were on the way to Emmaus, and he walked with us." The two men, Cleopas and his companion, were going home from Passover, I guess. That's what you do after a big event. You go home. But more than that, they had this unexpected problem. The unexpected problem was the death of the man that they believed would make Israel great again. He was the one who was going to deliver them. He was the one who was going to bring about their liberation. And the stranger asked the questions, "What are you discussing?" And then he got the answer. What things are you talking about? The things that have to do with Jesus of Nazareth. And they respond, are you the only one who doesn't know what happened? And then he begins the interpretation of the Scripture, Moses and the prophets, and how the Christ is supposed to suffer. And then the invitation is given by these two guys to stay. Stay with us. Those are great words. Stay with us. It's late. Come on. Be with us. And it's at table that finally Christ is known to them. You know, the church through the years has focused on the word and sacrament aspect of this entire passage. The teaching, preaching, serving of the communion. And the priests have had a hammerlock on Jesus Christ in the same way that the priests had a hammerlock on the law. And being one of them, although I don't go by the name of priest, I have to say the thing about Luke is different. Luke's gospel is not just for those who are in the religious establishment. It's a gospel of common, everyday things. You know what I'm saying? Common, everyday things. These two disciples, I mean, you can't get more ordinary. This guy, Cleopas, mentioned nowhere else. And then his companion, to make things even more commonplace, has no name, goes absolutely nameless. They undoubtedly were yearning for the one who had died, and his voice apparently was not recognizable on the road, and even his face and appearance must have been something completely different, but Christ became known in the most everyday kind of things. Sitting down, eating together, the hospitality of the table. A man named John Van Laar once said that there was nothing quite like Solly coming over to dinner. His friend Solly. Solly was a Jew who had survived the Holocaust as a child. He was from one of the Eastern European countries, and he enjoyed the fact that Solly sat directly across the table from him, and he remembered how Solly talked. He was so passionate when he was talking that food spewed across the table into his face. And far from making that a very gross occasion, the thing about it was the meal was not about food, just food. It was about conversation. And Solly always insisted upon talking about Torah, and it always occurred over food. There's something about food. And then there's the openness to the stranger. These two guys don't know this is Jesus, right? They don't recognize him. But still, they say to him, stay with us. Stay with us. The hour is late. I don't know how many of you know the story of St. Bridget. She is kind of the double patron saint of Ireland. There's Patrick and there's Bridget. She was an interesting character, and the story goes, pretty much on a legendary basis, that she was born of both a slave, that would be her mother, and a king, her father. Her mother was a serving woman for the king. And she lived with her mother until she was 10 years old, and then she moved to the court of her father. But over time, she began to see herself as a bride of Christ. As she got older, she developed the very first monastery for women in all of Ireland, something that continues to this day. And she was asked by one of the people who greatly admired her, "What is the kingdom to you?" And her response was, and I quote, "To satisfy the poor, to banish every hardship, and to save every sorrowful person." And I believe it was undoubtedly out of a sentiment like hers that we got the very ancient Irish blessing called the Rune of Hospitality. Do you know what that is? It is also one of the watchwords of the Iona community, the Rune of Hospitality. And it goes like this: "Saw a stranger last night. I put food in the eating place, drink in the drinking place, music in the listening place, and in the name of the Triune, He blessed myself and my house, my cattle, and my dear ones. And the lark said in her song, often, often, often goes the Christ in the stranger's guise. Often, often, often goes the Christ in the stranger's guise." Christ as the stranger. And the Irish to this day honor strangers because sometimes Christ goes out among Christ's people in the guise of a stranger. So the risen Lord was not found in the unshakable faith of these two disciples, and certainly not in the kind of wavering faith that many of the other disciples had. Jesus was not to be found in the overpowering insight or in the resilient ability to make lemonade out of lemons. It wasn't that. None of that existed. These two simply invited a stranger to stay with them. And then they ate. Don Miller wrote a really terrific book called Blue Like Jazz. I commend it to you. It is an outstanding piece of work. And this is the reminder that he inserts into this book. It's always the simple things that change our lives. And these things never happen when we're looking for them to happen. Life will reveal answers at the pace life wishes to do so. You feel like running, but life is on a stroll. This is how God does things. So you know, it's not only at that table long ago, or even this table this morning, that Christ appears. Christ appears at every table, in every simple, ordinary thing. Christ becomes known to us. So keep your eyes open and keep your heart open. Amen.